everybody, and welcome to Whispers on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog. It is 6:09 p.m. out here in downtown Wheeling. We just saw the American Legion 2009 Legacy Run, 300 motorcycles strong. It was quite an amazing thing. I want to thank everybody who was outside waving and clapping, and everybody who participates in it. It's an amazing thing. They raise money for
fallen soldiers'
Fallen
families.
soldiers.
Get their kids through college, to also help with rehab to injured soldiers. So
it really is a great thing. As Lola was saying, she's teary already. All right. Give us a call, 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, call us toll-free, 1-866-514-1600. We got a little bit of a difficult start today. We're kind of
what color
flustered
are you
around.
I'm red.
As we were getting ready to start the first time, all the motorcycles were outside, and I don't know if you've ever heard 300 motorcycles at the same time, but it was rather loud here.
Well,
And Jordan decided to step out on us and go outside and watch like a little kid.
Well, Steve
I
yelled.
wanted to.
Steve yelled, "Get out here!" And I thought there was a car accident or something because I heard the cops, so I ran out. You know, I kind of have to, the whole EMT thing.
Well, yeah, but
So I took off out there, figured if anything Nick could handle. But
Probably
then there
not.
was motorcycles. I was like, wait a minute.
Well, and actually, they're spending the night here in Wheeling. All the
Oh,
bikes
very
will be
nice.
parked down at the Heritage Port. They're staying up at the McClure House, and there's going to be a dinner for them tonight. And then they leave about 7:45 in the morning, and they're headed to. Oh, Steve told me.
where they come? They're coming from Indianapolis, right?
Right, from Indy to here, then somewhere in Virginia, and then they end up on Friday in Louisville for their big party and
Really?
everything. So that's a lot of miles sitting on your butt. And if you've ever been on a motorcycle for hours on end, you can truly empathize with how these guys are feeling. I'm sure they're so glad to get off these bikes today. And I don't know, they were probably just ahead or just behind that storm front that came through.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
you know, they've had a hard day of riding today. So, you know, come down, check the bikes out. They'll be at McClure House. I'm sure they'll be down in the lounge for a little while, knowing bikers where they'll be. So, you know, come on down. But I want to thank everybody, too, on I-70. Someone called me and said that every overpass on I-70 had people with, there I go again. I can't stay. I'm too tired at this point in the day. You know, with flags and say something because I can't do it.
Cake.
Hey, I don't know if you
Cake?
guys recognize the
sorry,
lovely
I just-
voice that's going on, but Miss Lola Miller decided to come back to us this week.
Hey,
And-
I had
and
fun
she
in that
blogged.
chat room last week. It was like, I could do this all the time. We've got some really nice people that listen from all over, and it was a lot of fun to just sit there and be able, because it's like having a third person in here if you're constantly typing on the chat rooms.
Was your
Guys.
I never do that.
Yeah.
Was your friend from the Ivory Coast in there? I know.
No, I don't know.
You talked to him once.
But I don't remember what
fan of
his
yours.
screen name was.
Oh, okay.
So,
That's pretty cool.
But
For
yeah.
anybody who wants to be on the chat room, it's Pal Talk.
Actually, go to our website, click on the Power Talk banner at the right-hand side. I had to hold up. I was like,
the other left.
The other left. And it'll go straight into the room. Might need to sign up for an account and chat away.
Yes.
It's good stuff. It's the Paranormal Radio Network page on there.
Do I call Anthony now?
Yeah,
Yes, if you would.
please.
If you've also been keeping up with the blogs and have noticed that our lovely Lola has been negating any said blog, I am happy to announce that today I logged on and she just went nuts.
I have
and
three
Jordan-
up there now.
She has
Jordan
three.
shrieked. I don't know if we can call this, well, I'm blogging now. What's a blog? Can we do that?
Yeah.
I guess it is a full sentence, so we'll give
What?
that to you.
What?
I said, I don't know if we can call this first one a blog, but, you know,
I'm,
Well,
I'm blogging
it's a-
now. What?
It's a full sentence. We'll give
Yes,
it to you.
it is. It has all the correct punctuation and everything.
It does. Good job.
It does. I know.
We have Anthony on the
Yes,
phone.
we do. There you go.
Mr.
Hey.
Anthony Atha with Morgantown Paranormal Conferences. You got something going on. You got a prize for somebody out there. What's going on?
All right. Well, we're excited to announce that in just 11 days, we have the Eastern Panhandle Paranormal Conference and that is in West Virginia. It's going to be in Martinsburg. And let me just start out there in the beginning. For your loyal Whisper listeners, we have a discount to where you can come to our conference for just $19.99, and the coupon code, really simple, is just Whispers. Go to our website and put it in.
All right.
So hopefully some of your listeners will come out and enjoy it. Unfortunately, you guys can't make it this time.
And we're going to try to set aside some time next time and be a part of it.
Yeah. We have some great speakers coming out to this one. We have 8 speakers lined up, some of our old ones and some new ones. And we are bringing back Susan Shepard for her message circle to do that once again.
All right.
And it's just so popular, we have to keep bringing her back. We're going to be giving out some donuts, get everyone started off right in the morning. There's some giveaways. We have raffles. We have a vendor ballroom. And we're having it all in a historic theater, so it's going to be a really nice feel. It's going to be a great day.
Now, give us the date and times again.
It's August 29th, which is not this Saturday, but the following Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We're opening the doors at 9 a.m., and the first speaker starts at 10 a.m. And it's going to run until 10 p.m. at night, maybe 10. That's a rough estimate. You can register at www.eppc, as in Eastern Panhandle Paranormal Conference, .eventbrite.com, and Brite is B-R-I-T-E.
Okay, Nick, can we get a link to that on the site?
I already have it up there.
There we go. So you can get to it directly from Whispers Radio's site. There is a discount if you type in Whispers. Mr. Anthony, thank you very much.
Now, you're also, you said you're going to be giving away some tickets right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's give away a pair.
Give away a pair. So if you want to get a pair, go to, is it Martinsburg, West Virginia? Just want to make sure I got it right. Correct?
Yep. Well,
Yep.
we'll hold on to those tickets because we got to get to this next call because it's from England. But we'll be giving that away today on the show.
All right.
Is that good?
Yep. Give me the contact number after you get hold of the people.
Will do. Thank you very much, Mr. Atha.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Anthony Atha, Morgantown Paranormal Conferences. Okay, our guest now. We're just chock full of them today. And just figure,
Are we though?
like my computer, right as we started, decided to update all of its software and restarted, and it's just going. I haven't even been able to touch it yet.
Click on Remind Me Later.
It's a Mac. You can't do that.
Oh, I see.
It's like,
Those
I will
damn
update
Macs.
now.
They do whatever they want to do.
They do.
They do. All right.
Stupid
You want to be
school.
a slave to your computer?
He is, isn't he?
Yes,
All right.
Yes, he is.
Today, for our first hour guest, number 2, we have Mr. Andy Lloyd, who's coming us from.
Starting to feel like a slut here.
Well, I mean, coming to us from
happening?
England, he is the author of The Dark Star, and that's talking about a dark star that's in the far reaches of our solar system and a possible planet that might be laying out there. Andy, you with us?
Yeah, hi Nick.
Hello. That's actually Jordan. I'm Nick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. People get us confused all the time.
Yes, I do, and I sit right in front of them, so don't feel bad.
I'm the handsome one.
Yes, that's true.
So how's everything going, Andy?
Oh, absolutely fine. So I was going to tell you all about this this planet that's lying out there that your listeners probably don't know about.
So is this what we call Planet X?
Yeah, it is. That's one of a number of names that are given to it. Some people like to call it Planet X. Some people like to call it Nibiru. Others, the Destroyer. Someone's even called it Wormwood. I think that's a biblical prophecy. And all the different names come from sort of different strands of mythology and so on about this entity out there that scientists suspect might be there but haven't yet discovered.
Now, how far out of away are? I mean, I know Pluto. Let's say we'll call Pluto a planet just to make it simple. How
Yeah.
far past the planet Pluto would this star be?
A very, very long way out. People have different ideas on this. The idea of Nibiru as a planet originally comes to us from the writings of a man called Zecharia Sitchin, and he wrote that ancient texts speak of this world orbiting the sun at a great distance, and it moves around the sun rather like a comet in a very sort of elongated orbit. So where it is would depend on what point in the orbit it is, but its furthest point would probably be about 10 times as far away from us as Pluto, which is a very significant distance.
Well, now, when we're talking about this, how far away then, or how large is the solar system? Because I mean, I always thought that like Pluto was like the outside of our, like the edge of the solar system. I guess I'm kind of, naive when it comes to this.
No, you're not alone. I think most people have that concept. I mean, when in school, you sit in a classroom and you put up a picture of the solar system, and there's the sun, and there's 8 or 9 planets, depending on how you feel at the time, and then it sort of stops. And I think that's most people's idea of what the solar system looks like. But in actual fact, the solar system is an absolutely immense area, and the area of that that the planets reside in is almost like a nucleus of an atom. It's a very small central point, and beyond that is this huge amount of space, the influence of the sun, where the comets reside. And the sun has actually got some influence out to half a light year, which is a staggering distance. And there are entities out there moving around, the comets moving around the sun at half a light year, which is, phenomenal.
Now, the comets, they come from I got to see if I can remember my astronomy. Kuiper Belt, correct?
The Kuiper Belt is a sort of a second asteroid belt. You have your traditional asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and then the Kuiper Belt is a sort of a second one that for a long time was theoretical, but in the last 10 years or so, astronomers have been discovering these sort of asteroid comet type entities out there, and that there is also this sort of it's almost like an eggshell area beyond that, which is called the Oort cloud, and that again is a sort of a theoretical area, because once you start getting out to those distances, it's very, very difficult to find these things. They're very, very, very small, and that's an immense area surrounding the entire solar system, full of, they think, a sort of a cloud of comets, and every so often those comets sort of as part of their trajectory come into the solar system, and then we'll see them in the sky, and they're sort of all their glory, as they shine up in the sky, like Hale-Bopp did back in, I think, was it 97 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're seeing comets like that, you're seeing them as they approach the sun at the sort of the very closest points. But those are the only ones we can see, and we have to deduce from those that beyond Pluto there is this immense belt of them that are capable of coming into us. And Planet X fits in with that, because Planet X behaves like one of these comets. And but instead of being a sort of icy rock, it's potentially an absolutely massive planet.
Yeah, well, let me make sure I'm getting all these correct. Planet X, is it I don't want to say rotating, orbiting our sun, or is it orbiting the this brown dwarf star that that's out there that nobody can see, but it's sitting there? Is that correct?
Yeah. The idea is that the brown dwarf is potentially a sort of a binary companion, and it itself orbits the sun. So it's like a Jupiter-like planet, but a bit warmer. And its existence explains a lot of anomalies in the solar system. And Planet X, you could either consider that to be Planet X, or it has its own system of planets, its own system of worlds. So it's like a tiny little dark star, which is where the name dark star comes from. And around this dark star are orbiting a retinue of their own planets, which are potentially warmed by it and potentially habitable. And one of those may be the Planet X body that strays into what most people consider to be the solar system, that strays in towards the sun and is then seen occasionally. But there are different variations on a theme and different possibilities, but that's probably the most simple way of putting it. The main point to get across is that if this dark star exists out there, it's capable of warming a planet close to it and making it life-bearing.
Really?
Now, when we think about our solar system, we tend to consider that only Earth is possibly capable of having any sort of reasonable life. Mars might have a little bit of bacteria or so, and there's a couple of moons and around Jupiter that are warmed a bit, and then may have some oceanic life. But beyond that, we can't conceive of there being any possibility of life out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people talk about visitors from other star systems, they have to travel immense distances. If we have a brown dwarf circling around the sun, then it's possible that visitors to the solar system are coming from much, much closer. They're effectively already in our back garden.
Now, why is it that we haven't found these yet? Like, so far in science, I mean, you don't hear about these, dark planets that are out there. I mean, is there more than one, or is there like just the one circling?
They were theoretical for a long time, because you're absolutely right. They're really difficult to spot. When they first born as stars, they're very bright for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. So when astronomers find them now, and they're only just starting to find them now, they've only seen the very young ones, and they're effectively fully lit up. But where normal stars continue to shine really for the duration of their lives, billions of years, these things sort of fat out after about a couple of million years, and they go dark. And so that makes them very, very difficult to see. They're almost like sort of renegade planets in their own right, but they're big. And so it's been difficult. They have to sort of extrapolate the population of these things from the very few, very young brown dwarfs that they've managed to find. But even from that, astronomers now consider it likely that there are as many brown dwarfs in our galaxy as there are stars. So if you look up into the night sky and you're looking at, say, 6,000 stars up in the sky, then within your sort of peripheral vision of the sky, there are another 6,000 brown dwarfs up there.
Really?
that potentially, are relatively close to us, you say.
Now, how would they, okay, you're saying that there's a brown dwarf star that's got this planet revolving around it.
Yeah.
That could possibly sustain life.
Yeah.
I don't want to say there's no light source, but how are they, let's say it was inhabited, how would life be thriving in that area?
There is potentially some life. I try to think of it like our sun is. If you walk into a room and you turn the light on, the electric light, the sun is like that. It fills the whole area with light, and it's right on top of us, and it's very, very bright. If you turn that light off and you walked into a room at night that had a fire on in the grate, and the fire had gone out, and there was just a little flickering of ashes, that's the brown dwarf idea. There is some light there. It is active insofar as it can create sort of infrared radiation and higher into the visibility. It will create some light, but it's essentially dark. It's like a smouldering ember. So the warmth from it and will create the conditions for life, and there would be a small amount of light, but it wouldn't be like our sun. It would be a reasonably dark world that we're talking about.
Wow.
And I'm uploading actually, and I thought I had done this earlier, some onto our website right now. But if you want to look at it, showing exactly where this is, darkstar1.co.uk, and you have the first picture, second picture other than the top one, called the New Solar System, and this shows the dwarf planets, Pluto and Charon. I think I'm saying that right. 2003 UB313, which I'd actually never heard of.
No.
I didn't know that was there. And then pretty good distance away is what you call the dark star, which is this brown dwarf. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And now around this, the planet we're talking about is around that, or is there another, like a gas giant?
We're open to speculation on that point.
Sure.
I mean, for the idea to work, I mean, essentially what I'm putting forward is that when Sitchin came out with this idea that gods from the planet Nibiru were visiting our world and offering a civilization, it's sort of an Eric von Daniken idea, it's the ancient astronauts. The problem that I had with that, and I found his ideas fascinating, but the problem I had with that is that to have a world out there amongst the comets, there's no heat source. It's frozen. It's just going to be a lump of ice.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't conceive of any possible way that you could explain how these, what he called the Anunnaki, the gods, could live there. It's just a frozen rock. It's like living on a comet. So the brown dwarf idea, or the dark star idea, is a solution to that. It's a way of providing a heated environment for the living beings to reside in. So how many planets there are is open to speculation. The texts that Sitchin works with, which come down from ancient Sumer, which predates sort of biblical texts, they go right back to sort of beginning of civilization. They talk about Nibiru. Well, they actually talk about it from Babylon. They talk about it as Marduk, and Marduk is this fiery red planet that is huge, and it comes crashing into the solar system sort of early on and breaks things up, and actually sort of knocks into sort of primordial Earth, in fact. And it brings with it moons. It brings with it 7 moons. So if we take, and one of the moons crashes into the Earth. So if we take that at face value, that those texts are describing this dark star system, and Marduk is the dark star, then you'd be talking about 6 or 7 planets that go with it. It has a retinue of 6 to 7 moons. And then one of those would need to be life-bearing. Only one. It would be like Earth in the solar system. You only need to have the one. The rest of them might just be rocky, or one of them might be a gas giant. It's open to speculation.
Now, let's talk about these the Anunnaki. What exactly did Sitchin? Yes, I want to say Stitchin. Am I saying that right? I'm sorry. What did he say that they did when they came here? They came during ancient times, correct?
Yeah, his theory is that they came to this world when we were really pretty basic creatures, and possibly hundreds of thousands of years ago. And they were effectively explorers. They came here for a purpose, and that was to do mining. They needed to get some. The texts talk about the need for gold. So they came here, and I think there's about 600 of them altogether. They set up a colony on Earth, and they started to mine. Now, I can imagine that if these Anunnaki were living in this world, Nibiru, that went around a brown dwarf, they'd be used to being in darkness. And to come here, it would have been a very, very bright world for them. The sun's very, very bright. So they actually ended up in these mines, digging out this gold. And Sitchin talks about the fact that after a while they got really tired of this. They were mining away, and one of them decided, the god Enki, decided it would be a really good idea if they genetically manipulated the local ape population and made them into humans, so that they could work for the Anunnaki. And what Sitchin's doing is he's saying this is described fairly literally in these terms by the texts. And the problem that academics have had when they've looked at these same texts is that they've sort of tried to make it out to be sort of myth, and it's all metaphorical. And he argues, no, it's not. You read it literally. They literally came down to Earth from heaven, set up, and then created us to work for them. And then after a while, we actually sort of, our species, we expanded and our numbers increased, and we kind of got out of hand a little bit. So there was an incident which was known as the flood, when we were basically wiped out to a great degree. And after this, the Anunnaki decided that they'd basically give us our planet back and give us civilization, and then they cleared off. So that's the basic story, but it goes into a tremendous amount of detail because there are all these texts that describe the story, and it's almost like a soap opera with the different Anunnaki and their roles and what they were interested in doing and what they did, and it was quite interesting to read, really, but there's quite a lot of it.
Now, where do we find information on on this story?
Well, Sitchin wrote 7 books, I think, which he called the Earth Chronicles, and he takes the text and he decodes them, I suppose you could say, in the sense that he explains how he understands them from reading them. So you could read his books and take his ideas directly from his writings, or you could pick up. You'd go on the internet and just look up some of these Sumerian texts or the Babylonian texts and fish around and just read them and see if that same sort of sense comes to you. The main text that he talks about in terms of the planet Nibiru is called the Enuma Elish, and that is a Babylonian creation myth. And I've sort of gone onto the internet and found this document and read the text, and it's pretty clear to me that nothing to do with Sitchin. It's just there, as a literal translation done by somebody who can translate the old cuneiform text. It seems to me that it's describing planets bashing about at the beginning of the world. So, I think he's on to something, and I'm very taken with his theory. I like it a lot. And my dark star interpretation is a way of explaining how that can work in a scientific sense.
We got a question from one of the chat rooms. It says, "Are the Nibiru miners like the Nephilims?"
Yeah, to be honest, I would say it's exactly that. The Nephilim, of course, are the entities that are described in Genesis very early on in the Bible as the Watchers, and I'm not going to quote it directly because I don't know it off the top of my head, but effectively they came down to Earth and they liked the ladies, and they created
it's nice to know that men never changed. It doesn't matter.
So but you see, the thing is that the Sumerian text and the Babylonian text, and this is a bit of a controversial thing really, but what Sitchin argues is, and Sumerologists argue the same, is that the early biblical texts were derived from the texts from the Mesopotamia, from places like Iraq, and a lot of it was when the Jewish people were in captivity. They were sort of heavily influenced by a lot of what they were exposed to in Babylon. So the argument goes that people like, and earlier on people like Abraham were sort of bringing in these ideas and the flood myths and so on. So the Nephilim are effectively a sort of a Hebrew interpretation of the Anunnaki. This would be how that idea goes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, let me see if I'm gonna try to get this my mind wrapped around this for a second. Okay, so what you're saying is that these gods that the Sumerians wrote about, I'm trying to think, like Gilgamesh, the epic Gilgamesh, so forth, were actually from were the Anunnaki. They came here looking for gold and pretty much decided to use whatever was here as their workers, more or less.
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
Let's turn it round. You imagine a situation. Say we had another planet in our solar system that would like Earth, and we got to the point as a species where we thought, actually, let's go up there and see what it's got and see if we can, human beings as we are would send a rocket up there, check it out. If we like what we saw, we'd put a colony on there, and we wouldn't just sort of go around capturing butterflies and putting them in a museum piece. We'd be interested in exploiting the resources that are available on that planet.
Mm-hmm.
And the Anunnaki are effectively just like us. They, from the descriptions that Sitchin elaborates on, they live a heck of a long time.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Are they? Throughout the reptilian, like a reptilian type of race, or the classic Greys that everybody talks about, or were they more or less like the human-looking?
Yeah.
Okay, they were okay.
So they may have been bigger than us. They are more powerful and more intelligent and all these things, and they effectively spliced their genes with the local population of, I don't know, Homo erectus or whatever it was at the point where they arrived,
Mm-hmm.
in order to create sort of Homo sapien. So we have within us part of their genetic code, and we are like them. So the way they act, it follows that we think the same way as them, which might explain why we're so different from other primates. We're very aggressive and we're
very greedy. We're self-centered.
Yeah.
I mean, that's right.
Yeah.
And I remember these stories from, some history classes I took years ago. And that if you go by this way of thinking, then that explains things like, the stories that came out of Chariots of the Gods and Atlantis and stories that go back historically even before the Sumerians and the Mesopotamians. They had to have come from somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, we have a mental idea now of what aliens look like. In the last 30 or so years, we as a culture have accepted the idea that aliens look like greys. They're effectively these sort of almond-eyed, short guys, about 4 foot, very spindly, big heads. Now, I'm not saying that those type of creatures don't visit us, because it's quite possible they do. There's certainly plenty of reports, and the Roswell incident is enough really to sort of give you a pretty good idea that something along those lines has happened. And it's possible that the Greys are connected with all this in some other way anyway. I mean, if the Anunnaki were capable of genetically manipulating ape-type creatures on this planet to create worker people for them, then it's quite possible that the Greys are another form of genetic elaboration. They've taken some other stock and they've made them suitable for space flight or some such like. But I do think it's, if we're trying to understand where aliens come from, we don't need to think about it being from the other side of the galaxy, because as soon as we start doing that, the scientists come along and say, well, that's not possible because it takes too long to get here, it can't travel faster than light speed, blah, blah, blah. And the beautiful thing about these ideas is that they're right here. They're next door. They don't have to spend tens of years or millions of years to get here. They're practically knocking on our door straight away, which brings a certain credibility to the idea of ancient astronauts.
Well, I don't know why we continue to think in terms that our science is their science. I've had this argument with somebody that used to work here, and that was his claim. There couldn't possibly be, because quantum physics is quantum physics. But why do we have to, well, I guess it's human nature, to not want to believe that there is something that is different or better than us, and not even necessarily better, but just different, and so that argument doesn't fly with me, because I really think that there are advances that we can't even grasp yet, that something else may have already tipped on millions of years ago, perhaps.
You mean sort of like the hyperspace concept,
yes,
or something like that?
Yes, or a wormhole that you can actually travel through.
Or even stargates, which I've heard, used for the Anunnaki.
Well, no.
Smile at me all you want.
Nick, we're turning your mic off.
I know.
Yeah, but like Lola said, I mean, we use, like on Earth, the type of technology that we've been able to create using the materials that we have here.
Right.
So, I mean, other planets in this, Planet X will be using the materials to the advance of their technology that they can create with their, minerals and resources,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very possible that, they can do a lot cooler stuff than we can.
Yeah, and certainly if they've been living if they lived for thousands of years rather than sort of short lifespans like us, then there's a lot of scope for them to have been around for a long time and to have thought things up. I mean, the other thing to think about, which is along the same lines as you're discussing, is that our sun's, about 4.5 billion years old? Well, the universe is 15 billion years old, and stars recycle. So ours is a sort of a recycled entity or something that happened before. In other words, throughout the cycles, you could have had life evolving some 10 billion years ago. 5 billion years before our sun even came into existence. So you're quite right. The fact that we've only sort of managed to get any sort of technological prowess in the last few thousand years, it staggers into insignificance with the time periods that are available for intelligent life before us. The question, I suppose, as a devil's advocate, as a scientist, you would put against that argument would be that, like you said, the laws of physics are the laws of physics as we understand them. But if they are as we understand them, then there are limits, because in order to be able to do things like using wormholes and hyperspace and things like that, the amount of energy that you need to use to do those kind of interdimensional shifting and things would be absolutely immense. But that's playing devil's advocate. I mean, I'm with you on this. We have a tendency to think that everything we know is all there is to know.
Right.
And every generation thinks that. We all think that we've reached the pinnacle of human scientific knowledge, and then something else comes out of the woodwork that shows that all that was just, halfway house, really. So you are right.
Well, we've run across that in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
Think of our grandparents. They just marvel at the things that kids today just take for granted.
Yeah.
So.
And there are a lot of naysayers in science as well. Look, there's a tradition that goes back a lot. I mean, part of it is because in order to become a scientist, you have to be trained in skeptical thinking. So you tend to say no to everything as a sort of a knee-jerk reaction. Anything new that comes along and say, no, it can't possibly be. And that is a problem for science itself, because it lacks vision sometimes. It doesn't want to believe that there are anything possible than what they already know. And they can be a very conservative lobby. That's not to say they don't do great work, but, the Victorians, they had vision. They come up with some great ideas, and science fiction was really alive back then. Jules Verne and people like that were writing wonderful ideas, and the concepts that were bandied around were very, very exciting. But, science even then still sort of thought, well, we've discovered all there is to discover, and nowadays I think it's even more conservative than that.
Well, look at Leonardo da Vinci. The things that he envisioned in the sketches and the drawings and the plans, and he was practically burned as a heretic. And now those things are out of date or are very commonplace. So yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, he's a very talented guy. It's absolutely amazing. His artistic abilities and his scientific abilities, and he's drawing and concepts for helicopters and all this kind of stuff. And he was so ahead of his time. I mean, you would consider him something of a seer now, I think.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and this is slightly off the track, but she's someone who's got quite psychic sort of abilities, and we were driving along, and she was saying to me, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, to my partner, and said, I think one day we're going to be out of these boxes that will go in front of the windscreen of the car that tell you how to get from A to B and tell you which direction to go. And she actually had it in her mind exactly what a sat nav would look like. And she said, if only I'd had the wherewithal to figure out how to take that forward, I could be worth billions now. So.
She's like me, a day late and $1 short. I can't win for losing.
Here's the question I've been thinking about since we started talking about this. If they were there when way back when, where are they now?
Well, going back to Sitchin, he describes a sort of a war between them. A quite disturbing war, really, because they were obviously very powerful beings. They had very high levels of technology. There weren't many of them here. And effectively what happened, I guess the small numbers of Anunnaki that were here, as the human population increased, that they each set themselves up as a god in an individual city. So they became tribal. And conflicts emerged where, one god wanted to better another god. And they ended up in a situation where they had a war. Now, I'm not sure I feel very comfortable with the idea that Sitchin puts across here, but what he said was there was a nuclear incident. And that they laid waste to a large tract of land sort of around about the Sinai region, and that a radioactive cloud fallout from this nuclear incident, wiped out a lot of people in the sort of Mesopotamian area, and the Anunnaki, came to, it was bad for them. They suffered badly, and these kind of incidents, that including the flood as well, sort of made them give up on living here. They threw in their chips. So the understanding is that they left, but I kind of like the idea that a few of them stay behind. And in the last couple of years, I've been writing fiction about this as well, because I like the idea of fiction describes a lot of what happened, and then you get up to sort of around about 500 BC or so, and the story stops. And I was always taken with the idea that perhaps, the events in sort of 2,000 years ago may have something to do with the Anunnaki. I've always liked that. And I've always been interested in what would happen if they're still around here. So I've been writing novels that include them as the sort of players, if you like, within human society, and how we come to terms with their existence and discovering their planet.
Well, they'd have to. I'm sorry, Nick.
Oh, no.
They would have to have really diluted the gene pool. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but, eventually what has been the downfall of every major civilization since our modern history has been written down. And that is when you start getting such a narrow focus on your ruling class that they either, one, kill each other off, or if it goes the other way, the grandeur or the better genes get diluted by just generation after generation of procreating with what you would consider to be a lesser race. I mean, that could be theoretically what happened to them. Not so much that they wiped each other out and then, took off, the last remaining ones took off and flew away, but just that by, keeping the race going and not being careful about genetics, they eventually were just absorbed into the rest of society, and the ones that held themselves up as being better were eventually overthrown.
In taking that thought, obviously in the Bible they talk about the patriarchs, which is effectively the same sort of stream we're discussing here, as their life expectancy contracting with each generation, and that's always fascinated me, because it intimates exactly what you're saying, that the gods, if that is the case, if that's the origin of our species, their obviously life expectancy would have been that much longer, and then they sort of spliced with us. So you can imagine, their first sort of born creature, the Adam, having a life expectancy of, say, of 1,000 years, and then as it becomes diluted, as you say, that life expectancy drops and drops and drops. And I agree with you. I think in terms of life expectancy, that's certainly the case. Whether the original Anunnaki would feature in that, I don't know. But what I would say is this: I strongly suspect that if you were living on a planet around a little brown dwarf, that the cosmic radiation emitted from that planet, the ultraviolet, the hazardous stuff that causes us cancer, all of us eventually, and causes genetic disruption to us, it's not going to be there. They're not living next door to a bright star that's constantly hammering them with harmful radiation.
Yeah.
So that fits with the idea of longevity. Whereas here, they come to here, and they're 3 ticks away from this sort of mainstream star that's hammering them with all this stuff, and it affects their genetic code. It affects our genetic code, and it gives us relatively short lifespans. So yeah, I would think Earth, it sounds bizarre to say this, and it turns everything on its head from what we understand, but the common sense way of looking at it, if this scenario works, is that Earth is actually quite a dangerous place because of its proximity to the sun. And after a while,
we had a guest on last week that said the very same thing. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it is. The thing is, once you start, and you with all these subjects that you cover, it's the same sort of thing. Once you start sort of stepping thinking outside of the box and you start to look at things from a different angle, some stuff makes sense, and then some stuff just does become really screwy. And that is one of the things that really makes sense to me. That entities coming here that have long lifespans wouldn't live next door to really bright stars. The dark star thing works in that sense.
Can I ask a question? And this is kind of my brain's been trying to circle around all this like through the entire show. If you've noticed, I haven't been talking much.
No, it's cool.
Okay, how long? You said that this planet was on a very elongated orbit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how long did it take to orbit?
Sitchin talks about 3,600 years. I'm open to other possibilities, but that's what most people associate with.
All right, well, let's say that 3,600 years, this dark planet was really close to ours,
mm-hmm.
and they just kind of hopped on over.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a big change at all. So they just hop on over and they stir up all kinds of havoc and start bedding our natives, and then their planet starts to move a little farther away, and they say, "Oh, we better jump back on there, and we'll be back in 3,600
Or they waited
years."
until the next cycle came.
Yeah.
You're very much up to speed, because that's essentially the scenario that's painted through Sitchin. I mean, what he describes is that there is a permanent colony on Earth of the ones that come here and work. And then every time Nibiru reappears in the sky, which would have been a tumultuous event, this huge red sort of orb appearing in the sky, the sort of second sun, really, then their main god, called Anu, which is the name from which the Anunnaki are derived, he visits. And it's kind of like, I think Sitchin calls it a state visit of Anu. So it's exactly as you say. And Sitchin has correlated these, when Nibiru appears, with points in human development which we've made a big leap. And he argues that each time they've come back, they've sort of given us a gift of further civilization. They provided us the idea of animal husbandry, or they taught us how to make domesticated crops.
Yeah.
And the yields of crops go up, which allow us to move from hunter-gathering into agriculture. And these kind of developmental steps he describes as being in cycles that are linked to Nibiru.
Mr. Lloyd, I do hate to say this, but we
too.
are out of time. and Lola's been flashing me the
Yes,
time's up signal for the last couple of minutes, and
we
I
have
just want
to
you
hit
to
the
keep
top
going.
of the hour hard. So.
Well, it's been a great pleasure for me to
my
be
brain,
on the
I think, grew a couple inches and is just like
I know,
throbbing.
he looks smarter.
Like there's
He
a little
looks
twinkle
smarter.
in my eye.
Oh, I would love to have you back on again. I'm plucking stuff now from back when I was in college, and I was a world history major, and so it's like, oh my goodness.
And you thought you'd never use it again.
I know it, and this is just, oh man, you started with Mesopotamia and Sumerians, and it's like, oh, I do know what he's talking about.
This has been a great show for Lola, because she started off crying, now she's
did.
giggly, she feels
I did.
like she knows something.
Don't get cocky there, Jordan. Don't you do it.
Sir, we have two of your books on our website that link directly to buy them, The Dark Star and Ezekiel 1.
What are your fictional books?
Dark Star's non-fiction. It's sort of the discussing the subject in a sort of serious term.
Okay,
Ezekiel 1 is a conspiracy thriller.
That just came out, correct?
And again, it's picking up similar themes, but it's more of a sort of something just to pick up and read that's going to be enjoyable and fast-moving. And I'm just writing a sequel to that at the moment.
That's
awesome.
That's
the one I'd like to read.
We're definitely we're going to have you back on and
yes.
track these books and stuff. This has been great. I've loved it. Thank you very much, Andy Lloyd.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
we're going to have you back on.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, man, my brain hurts.
I know. And the thing was, I was trying to get the computer and this and this and this. So I lost the very beginning. But boy, once I really had the ability to sit back and really listen, oh my gosh, I just think he's...
Yeah, someone on the chat room says we should bring him on for 2 hours next time.
I know.
Well, we'll need it. That's why Coast to Coast has him on for 3 or 4 hours or what. He's needed just to get your brain around what he's saying. We're going to have to hit this break hard. Okay, we're going to be right back. You're listening to Whispers Radio on AM 1600 WKKX, the Valley's Watchdog, and UPRN, the UFO Paranormal Radio Network. We'll be right back.
We should bring him on for 2 hours next time.
I know.
Well, we'll need it. That's why, like, Coast to Coast has him on for, like, 3 or 4 hours. Or, you know, it's... They rock.
Very good. I'm glad you brought this up.
we might play this next week too.
Yeah.
Give them an extra.
Oh, I'm gonna play
boost.
it for Sherry tomorrow.
Are ya?
Yeah.
There you go. There you go, guys. You get two plugs, the same radio station, 2 different shows. You guys rock. It's 7:12.
We're all about finding new and interesting things.
Tell you what, we just found out there's another planet in our solar system and
Hey.
a star.
That really makes, honestly, I know that to some people it probably sounded way out there, but I've heard of brown dwarfs before.
Yeah, I have too.
And if you have any kind of ancient history, if you've read any of it, there are a lot of stories that this would make perfect sense, to fit right into. Because let's face it, how in the world did some of the things in ancient history ever get accomplished or done? There's always been the idea that, chariots of the gods, that something came down and inspired this or built it. And this story, makes a whole lot of sense. And I'm just not buying that because we haven't discovered it. We don't believe it can happen, that it hasn't. And like he said, stars and worlds were born and gone long before the Earth was even thought of. So, who's to say that, there wasn't, if you want to take it to a cartoon kind of thing, look at Superman.
Yeah.
His world was being destroyed. So they send him off to land wherever. I don't know.
Hey, I'll say that later.
Want to go ahead and give away the tickets?
Yeah, I was thinking, somebody call us. We got 2 tickets to the Eastern Paranormal Conference.
That's in Martinsburg, West Virginia, which is in the Eastern Panhandle, off of Interstate 81, going south, I'm guessing, if you're coming. Depends, whichever way you're going. But
call us 304-214-1600. If you're out of the area, 1-866-514-1600. First caller we get, you get 2 tickets.
And it's on August 29th. More information can be found at eppc.eventbrite.com. So.
Bum, 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 bum.
And I'm looking here. I was trying to see exactly what's going to be happening. Doors open at 9 o'clock. Sean Kelly, Do Spirits Exist? At 10:45, Sharon Kincaid, Improving the Study of the Paranormal. 11:30, Vince Wilson. They're going to be breaking for lunch around 12:15 to 1:30. 1:30, Ree Sadler, Overlooked on the Paranormal Map, the historic haunts of the Old Line State, talking about haunts in Maryland. 2:15, Joey Ward. 3 o'clock, Russ Norritel. 3:45, one of our past guests, Susan Shepard, Psychic Sensing, How Is It Done? John Sable, 4:30, The Rehaunting of Gettysburg. And, I know that one. Lola got a little shiver there, so.
She loves her some Gettysburg.
Lecture concludes 5:15 to 7 o'clock. Let me see here. And then at 7 to 9:30, Victorian Seance, Message Circle with Psychic Medium, Susan Shepard. So give us a call. We'll get that. Give those tickets first person. Those numbers again: 304-214-1600. Out of the area, 1-866-514-1600.
I hope somebody gets them. That'd be nice.
I know the biggest problem I can think of right now would be making sure they're off that day and a little bit of a way to travel. So I understand that, and so if you want to just give us a call throughout the show, whoever comes first, and I think Jordan might be. Yeah, Jordan. I don't know if he's. I think Jordan might have the tickets given away. If not, just keep.
Saying,
just keep. What you heard was Jordan saying some weird thing in the background. And of course, I'm away from the phone, so I have to be watching all the activity going on. So, and Lola's picking up phones. And she's also trying to teach Jordan how to use modern technology.
You're on the air.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to make a big thing. I just didn't know how to get her on the air from answering the phone. I didn't know how to make that connection.
Okay.
But we do have somebody that has the tickets.
Good.
Round of applause, Miss Barb.
Hello, Barb. Congratulations.
I'm the only one clapping for you. Know where your love comes from.
I'm busy. I'm working hard.
Lola
These boys are
and...
slave masters.
Lola,
Stop
you jump
talking.
Right back into it, don't you? Your vacation and then boom.
I tell you what, we came in and we had Steve leaving, the motorcycles coming in. I had like 2 pages worth of stuff that she had to take care of in like a minute.
Oh, and then the computer just went haywire on me
as usual. She was going to smack him, and I kept encouraging her, and she didn't.
I know it.
That was her best chance
ever. Computer from Hades.
I know. You know what they're like here. Believe me.
Well, Barb, if you want to give Lola your email address, well, actually telephone number, I'm going to be emailing that to Anthony. He's waiting patiently at the computer right now for that, and he's going to call you as soon as I give him that number and give you all the details, how to get there, where to get the tickets, print them off, whatever.
Great.
Congratulations, Barb.
Oh.
And enjoy it. You have to call and tell us how it was.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I want to know.
All right, see you, Barb.
All right, guys.
Hold on, Barb. Just hold on.
Okay. We'll see you from on the air. Okay. If anybody else out there still wants to go, there are tickets available at a discounted cost. The discounted code is Whispers.
It's go to eppc.eventbrite.com and he'll hook you up.
All righty.
Right. Well, we have our next guest is on the line.
All right, our next guest is Mr.
him.
Neil Adams. He is talking about the expanding Earth theory. That's where, I guess, Earth started off really small, and then as it swelled, everything separated. Neil, you with us?
Yeah, I'm right here.
How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing just fine. No. I wouldn't call it the expanding Earth theory, although guy who first came up with it in the 1960s, Samuel Warren Carey, professor of geology Samuel Warren Carey, did call it the expanding Earth theory. On the other hand, Sam Carey was a geologist and not a physicist, so he would not necessarily know what mechanism there would have to be to make the Earth get bigger.
So what should we call it?
Well, you could call it the growing, if you want to have the official title, it's called the growing Earth, growing universe theory.
Oh, okay.
And it implies that not only the Earth grows, but of course you cannot say, for example, my kid grows, but your kid doesn't grow. It kind of has to say everything grows. And if everything grows, that means the universe grows. And what that means, unfortunately, to an awful lot of physicists, it means that the universe is growing, not exploding. Of course, I didn't exactly believe them when they told me that the universe was exploding. So I'm not too disappointed in this concept. So the question really boils down to is, how do we get a universe? Did the universe suddenly, magically, Merlin comes in and he waves his magic wand and boom, it bursts into existence? Or did it, like everything we know, start with something really, really, really tiny, like an electron and a positron, and in effect make itself out of whatever was there before, whatever pre-matter the universe is made of, and actually produce matter to create the universe that we have today? And is it continuing to produce itself? And that's why it seems to be exploding.
No. Which makes sense. When I first thought of the expanding Earth theory, I'm thinking, okay, well, the Earth's going to get huge.
It's like a balloon.
Everything else around is going to stay the same size, and I was like, that's kind of silly.
We're going to absorb it like an amoeba.
So we don't have to go out to other planets. We're just going to go to them.
Right, exactly. Yeah. We'll expand to them, and they'll puncture us.
Now, how did you get into all this?
Well, I got into it when I was a kid, and in fact, this guy Samuel Warren Carey that I mentioned presented the competing theory to what we call the Pangaea Theory, which is a theory that says that all the continents on Earth were all collected in one big giant island on one side of the Earth. Of course, if I were in a spaceship flying to this Earth and I saw this planet that was sitting there and all the land was on one side and the rest of it, 2/3 of the planet, was water 2 to 4 miles deep, I might suspect that somebody had a hand in doing this. I don't know who. So what happens is that Samuel Warren Carey, who was an Australian geologist, stepped up to the plate and he said, hey, guys, look, all you're saying, because you're Americans and Europeans, is that all the continents connected in the Atlantic, that the Atlantic didn't exist starting 200 million years ago. And what happened was that big island on one side of the Earth broke apart and spread apart to form the continents the way that we see them. Why wouldn't you think the same thing would happen in the Pacific? I mean, what could possibly, I mean, maybe because you're Americans and Europeans and you're so egocentric that you think that only happens on your ocean, but what about the Pacific? What about all the ocean? In other words, wouldn't it be much more logical to say that for some reason, because I'm a geologist and I can't tell you, but for some reason the Earth grew or expanded, and the Earth was coated with granitic rock, which is what the continents are made of, and the continents are made of granitic rock and other stuff, and they are between, say, 1 and 4 billion years old. Let's just say that it was coated by this, and it was growing very, very slowly, and the crust was kind of spreading and pulling apart, and water fell onto the land and made shallow seas on the continental plates, which is why we find fish fossils on the continental plates and not in the deep oceans. I know it's a little odd for me to say that, but that's basically the truth. All fish fossils, ancient fish fossils that you see in your museums, are all from the continental plate. They're not from the deep ocean, okay?
Really?
That's right. The problem is that you'll be talking to me and I'll say shit like that, stuff like that. True?
I've got to be careful with that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
I apologize.
Lil
Had
almost had a heart attack.
You know what I do to people that do that?
I didn't do that. I thought I was talking to a friend.
No,
I know. I believe me, one of the hardest things that I ever had to adjust to was my mouth.
Right.
So
anyway, Sam Carey said, look, doesn't it make more sense that the Earth is growing and expanding, and what happens is that outer crust simply cracked apart like an eggshell, and new basaltic oceanic plate spread in those cracks and just continued to spread and made a new lower level to the crust of the Earth. And the continents were the pieces that were left. Doesn't that, in other words, aren't we abrogating our responsibility by saying, well, all the continents were collected on one side of the Earth? I mean, they have a swimming meet and they all met there and got together for 200 or 300 million years, and then they broke apart like some, swimming crew and then moved around the Earth? It just doesn't make sense. It makes much more sense to say that the Earth grew, it cracked, and those pieces were left where they basically are on the Earth, and the ocean bottoms spread. Turns out all the ocean bottoms on Earth are no older. There's not one area of ocean, deep ocean on the Earth, that is older than 180 million years old. Now, 180 million years old, that's really not that long ago.
Old.
That's not like
No.
5 billion, 4 billion, or 3 billion, or 2 billion, or 1 billion, which is what the continental plates are made of. It's 180 million years old. That's, dinosaurs were still walking around when that happened, when that began.
So how does that work? How does the bottom of the ocean not be as old as the top?
Well, because it's new.
Okay.
It's made, and it continues to be made today. What you have going up the middle of the oceans in some places near the edge of the oceans is you have what are called rifts. Okay, those are cracks that go right up the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. They go on the right-hand side of the Pacific Ocean. And what happens is that oceanic plate spreads apart, new material comes up and is hardened by the seawater and becomes new hardened material. And one of the ways you can find out how old that is, which is what they did in the 60s, they sent probes down and they dug those things out. One of the ways you know that is because we have what we call magnetic reversals. A magnetic reversal means that every number of 100 million years, the magnetic field of the Earth reverses. So if you dig a piece over here and it's north to south, and then you dig a piece over here and it's south to north, then you know how old that is. So they went across the oceans and they dated all the oceans. And they discovered, and you can go on the internet and pull up Crustal Age Map. Anybody can do it right there, Crustal Age Map. And you will see there's no part of the ocean that's older. The deep ocean now, not the Great Lakes or various other places. The deep ocean, which is 2/3 of the Earth, easily, perhaps a little bit more, is no older than 180 million years old.
Wow.
No older. The continental plates that have moved apart from one another are between 1 billion and, actually some places are even younger, but essentially they're billions of years old. And they are granitic in nature. They're made of granitic rock, which is lighter than that basaltic rock that's down in the ocean. Basaltic rock is about 15% denser than granitic continental rock. It's the newer stuff, and the lighter stuff, which is what the continents are, sits on top of it in these big chunks, which all broke apart beginning on 180 million years ago. Of course, this is theory. Everything in science is theory up to a point. Truth. Now, that crust of the Earth that broke apart, that's where the shallow seas were. So when you talk about ancient fish fossils, when you talk about ancient fish, when you talk about plesiosaurs, when you talk about any of these things, all of these fish are only found, all their fish bones and fossils are only found on the continents. That's why you don't have guys digging fish fossils out of the ocean. In fact, there are no ancient fish fossils in the deep ocean because the deep ocean didn't exist.
Now, what rate would you say that we're growing then?
Well, that's the thing. It's actually accelerating. The rate of growth is accelerating. 180 million years ago, the rate of growth was not that great. Nowadays, in the last 10 million years, thinking 10 million years. Now remember, dinosaurs died 64 million years ago. Just the last 10 million years, the surface of the Earth increased in square mileage to the size of Africa.
Wow.
That's how big it increased in the last 10 million years. In fact, the previous 10 million years very similar. Previous 10 million years a little bit similar. Then it decreases going downward till about 180 million years ago. It's the size of, say, New Zealand. That's how much it grew then.
Okay, go ahead.
Quick question.
Sure.
So this is in opposition to the continental drift theory, correct?
Not really, because let me tell you something about the continental drift theory.
Sure.
Okay? Because when I was a kid, I heard this continental drift theory, which I think is fine. There's a lot about it that's great. Continents were once connected into the island of Pangaea, except Sam Carey says, yeah, it was an island, but it covered the Earth. Same theory, different picture. Okay?
Okay.
He says, well, the thing about continental drift is the continents are pretty much where they're supposed to be. If you look at the oceans, there are lines in the ocean that tell you where the continents sort of came from, and they radiate out from all the continents. So all you really have to do is shrink the Earth and have the continents move along those lines, but of course they move in all directions along those lines until they lock together. I made a video of this, and it's one of the reasons why I'm talking about it. I made this very nifty video, and it's on YouTube.
We were watching the first video,
right.
Clip number 0, where it showed the, it starts out with where we're at now, and everything starts, sliding into place along the words
ridges,
right.
Along the ridges, and it's like a puzzle, and it just goes right together. And
exactly.
I actually rewound it. We watched it again.
No.
So, and it was actually very interesting.
There are a lot of people who criticize this and say, well, you're just full of it. And I have to say, well, you know what? If I were an archaeologist and I found a vase and it was broken in 10 pieces and I glued it together, the chances are it would not be an accordion. It would be a vase. Okay? If I take all these pieces and I just allow them to move together, I didn't move them around, slide them around and turn them around and turn them upside down. I just allowed the Earth to get smaller and let them slide together. Some little pieces had to recurl because they were pulled out, but essentially you watch the thing and they just fit together. That's impossible. It can't just fit together unless it did fit together. You could argue, I can understand people arguing with me and saying you're out of your mind and all the rest of it. But how could they fit together? They couldn't. It looked like a football, or it would look like something else if it was wrong. It looks like a globe when it's done, and it's a smaller Earth, and they all fit together. So
now,
you could,
the land masses, are the land masses changing at all, or
they
are they
too.
growing?
The land masses are changing, and there's a lot of spreading going on. For example, the Grand Canyon is a spread. The Great Lakes is a spread. I know you were told they were gouged out by glaciers, but no, they are spreads. All the bays along the edges of the continents are essentially splits, because what happens is, the thing about this theory is it answers all the questions. And that's certainly the bad part about the theory, and that's what gets everybody angry at me, because I'm not just saying, hey, it's a face on Mars. When we talk about mountains, for example, before 200 million years ago, do you guys have callers? Do you have geologists call, people who call? I'm going to say something will get everybody mad, okay?
Go for it.
Be our guest.
Before 200 million years ago, there were no mountains on Earth.
Huh.
In other words, dinosaurs traveled anywhere on Earth, on Pangaea or on the Earth, they wanted to, and there were no mountains to get in their way. They traveled the Earth, and all the dinosaurs lived on all 7 continents because there were no mountains in their way. How do we get mountains? Well, geologists will tell you the way you get mountains is continents, they travel across the Earth, and they crash into one another. And so they push up these mountains. Well, the Rocky Mountains are there, and there's nothing crashing into the United States of America making the Rocky Mountains. And they're more like 80 million years old.
Yeah.
Not very old. In fact, the Andes Mountains are no older than 25 million years old. Dinosaurs died before those mountains started to grow up. Okay? The way mountains happen is this. And of course, this is theory, so there's no reason for anybody to believe this or to get angry at me, but I'm just going to tell you. If you put your hand on the table, okay, flat on the table.
They're on there.
Okay, and you raise the palm of your hand and you look at your knuckles, you see mountain ranges. Okay, that's because your hand recurved. Your hand didn't get any longer, but it recurved. Now, if we started with a hand that was more curved, let's just say the Earth is a smaller Earth. And as the Earth grew, the curve became shallower, okay? What would happen to the upper 30 kilometers of plate is the top of those plates would buckle into mountains. That's how we get mountains on Earth.
Okay. I'm getting that.
You see it?
Yeah.
Okay. That's how you get mountains. We didn't have mountains before on Earth. Yes, we had folded land and other stuff because the Earth was growing even before that. But that's how we get mountains. Well, those mountains, all these things are clues to the Earth growing. Those continental plates, the reason that those mountains are being created is that's old outer crust. It's like the old dead skin of an animal, right? Mm-hmm. It's old dead skin, and it sits there dry and old and cold, but it's curved a certain amount, and it's between 30 and 70 kilometers thick. So what happens as the Earth grows, and of course the ocean, it's growing in the oceans, not the continents. Okay, even though yes, some of the continents are spreading. Middle of North America is spreading. There's some spreading going on, but not like the oceans. What happens is the curve changes, just like the back of your hand, and it buckles. The top of it buckles. Not all 30 kilometers, but the top few kilometers start to buckle, and you get mountain ranges.
Okay, we have a caller.
Okay.
Let's see if he's a geologist. Bill, you a geologist?
I wish I were. I'd like to ask the geologist a couple questions, if I may. Okay. How big is the Earth getting each year? Can you project that?
Well, it's between 6 and 12 inches bigger around each year.
So eventually, everybody's house will come off its foundation, right? I mean, eventually.
I can't imagine why.
Okay, now you said.
But I thought that was a funny thing to say.
No, I'm being serious.
Okay.
You said dinosaurs lived on all 7 continents.
Yep.
That includes Antarctica.
Yes, it does. In fact, anthropologists and anthropologists go to Antarctica in the summertime, and they dig up dinosaur bones.
The woolly mammoth.
Yeah, the mammoth.
Yeah.
Well, the woolly mammoth would be in the north, but they dig up dinosaur. They dig up dinosaur
Just trying to help
bones.
You here.
Yes, right. They not only dig up dinosaur bones, but there was a small tooth area from a platypus in Antarctica. They go there every summer and dig it up because Antarctica. Remember, here's another thing that probably you don't know. 200 million years ago, there were no frozen poles. There was no Antarctica. There, in fact, were no frozen poles. The weather from pole to pole was subtropical. It was a very different planet.
Huh.
Okay, that explains it then. Thank you.
Oh.
Where were you calling from, Bill?
Yeah.
Thanks for your call, Bill.
He's from Wheeling.
Oh, okay, I thought so. I just want to make sure.
You got his question dead on then.
Wow.
Now, I know one person in our chat room was making the point that we, through Hubble, we've been watching, the other planets and stars and everything moving away, which would start with the theory of the Big Bang, and everything moves away, and then eventually, the big crunch, I think, where everything will come back.
See, that's what they used to say back when I was a kid. They used to say, well, you have this Big Bang, and then you have this big crunch. So what happens is everything blows up and goes out, and it gets out a certain distance, and then it comes back and all crunches together, and then blows up and goes out. The truth of the matter is, we don't really care how the universe breathes. We want to know where this stuff came from. And that does not answer that question. But to go back to our quote, expanding or growing universe, the fact of the matter is, 10 years ago, scientists decided to measure how quickly the outer part of the universe, or the universe, the observable portion of the universe, is moving outward. In other words, is it slowing down? Because if there's an explosion, of course, at a certain, almost immediately, it's going to start to slow down, right? Like an explosion.
Yeah.
I study ballistics among all the other sciences in the world, so I can tell you about it. Almost immediately, you get a quick burst of energy. You let that energy expend, and then it kind of slows down. Well, of course, in space, the question would have to be for scientists, does it slow down, or does it continue to go just as fast outward? Well, what they discovered was it's accelerating outward. It's going faster outward. This is not an explosion. Not at all. So then how do you explain the Big Bang? Well, you don't explain the Big Bang. You kind of go, it's accelerating outward? I guess we were wrong. No, we can't be wrong. We're scientists. Forget it. We'll just adjust our theory. Well, it doesn't work like that. Theories don't get adjusted. If the universe is growing, and by growing we mean, we don't mean rocks next to rocks. Everything that we know, everything, all atoms, all positrons, electrons, protons, neutrons, all rocks, and everything else that we know is got an electromagnetic field around it. For example, if you were to say, what is an atom? An atom is a small, tiny particle, or several particles, that has an electromagnetic field around it. And the electromagnetic field is the size of Yankee Stadium. I'm sorry to say Yankee Stadium, but there you go.
Yeah.
Yankee, and the atom at the center of it is the size of a fly. It's the electromagnetic field that you sense. So, for example, if you put your hand on the table, your hand doesn't touch the table, because there would be a big explosion if that happened. Your hand, the electromagnetic field of your hand, come near the electromagnetic fields of the atoms of the table, and they interact and push each other away. That's how the universe works. So if you take that same analogy, our solar system has an electromagnetic field, just like the Earth has an electromagnetic field, and it protects the Earth from particles coming in from the solar wind and the solar storm. Okay. You've heard about that. Well, the sun has an electromagnetic field, and the solar system that the sun is part of is an electromagnetic field with a bunch of little particles in it, a sun and planets. But the field, is really what our solar system is, just like our galaxy has a field. It's not that thing that you see, it's the electromagnetic field around it. So the reason solar systems don't bump into one another is that there's a field around them, just like your hand can't enter your other hand. There's fields around them, so they protect it. It's sort of like anti-gravity. They push each other away. So as the universe is growing, the electromagnetic fields of all the particles of matter push away at one another and don't enter their field. And so if you have a growing universe, what happens simply is this, sort of like you or your kid, as he gets bigger, he takes up more space. As our universe gets bigger, it takes up more space. The space between the atoms of your child that are living there, that are parts of your cells, have a given amount of space between them, and they can't crunch together and turn him into a cube of solid iridium, okay? They have to spread out, and he has to get bigger. That's what's happening to the universe.
Now, okay, let's say, Earth is expanding.
Growing.
Okay, we're growing.
We're not expanding because balloons expand. Get that thought in your head there.
So
I'll hit him every time he says
Earth's core, what's going on with it? I mean, we're getting more water in essence, right? If we were a solid landmass before, we're getting water coming in. I mean,
remember, forget the water coming in. There's no water coming in. The water is made on Earth. Now, what has to happen if the Earth grows is that there has to be some place in the Earth that makes new matter. You can't have a planet grow without new matter being made. Now, for your kid, food goes into your system, it goes into the stomach, it starts to feed the cells reproduce each other, and the kid grows. Planets are obviously not alive, and they don't have cells, and they don't do it that way, but they still are a model for doing something. Something has to happen inside the planet, inside the electromagnetic field and the incredibly hot temperatures inside the Earth that causes new matter to be made. And it can't just be, a chunk of iron. It has to be matter up and down the periodic table. You remember the periodic table from school?
Yeah.
It has to be oxygen. It has to be hydrogen. It has to be, a potassium. It has to be sulfur. It has to be iron. It has to be all these things. There must be a rainbow of place or superheated plasma where these atoms are assembled and pushed into the mantle of the Earth. There has to be, or else the Earth couldn't grow, and you can take the theory and throw it out the window. So matter has to be created inside the Earth. Well, guess what? All these planets and suns are exactly what matter making is happening in. In other words, there is no other function for a sun and planets. I know what the function is for Earth people to live on and to crawl around, but no, that's not the function of the Earth. The function of the Earth and the function of the sun and all these balls that float around in space is to make new matter and to grow. And what happens with suns is suns grow and grow and grow, and they supernova, and they spread their cells everywhere nearby, and then they start to collect again and make more stuff. They, in effect, reproduce. It's a non-sexual reproduction, but essentially what happens is new matter is made at the core. And you can tell from what I told you before that as the Earth grows, it grows quicker. In other words, whatever this process that's happening inside the core of the Earth, it's accelerating. So one day we will become a Jupiter, and one day a Jupiter will become a sun. Okay?
Wow.
That's how you get that stuff, It's just that's the way it goes.
I was thinking Earth would just get so big that the continents would just kind of like be really, really far out, and we wouldn't see the other continents.
No, that won't be that way, because what will happen is sort of what happens on the Earth today. 200 million years ago, 2/3 of the continents that we see today were covered with shallow seas. The whole Midwest of North America was covered with a shallow sea. The Rocky Mountains didn't exist, and a big chunk of the edge of the North American continent was underwater. 2/3, nearly, of the North American continent was underwater. So if you lived in Utah, back then, 200 million years ago, there was about 1,000 feet of water above you, and giant creatures were eating other giant creatures and using shark for bait. Okay, and that was the state of the crust of the Earth. So yes, there was water, and you sort of like, people say, well, it's shallow seas. That's shallow. That's really not much of a sea. No, that's a half a mile. Okay, people say, oh, that's not very big. People think the Great Lakes aren't very big, but we need a pair of glasses that shows us the proportion of things. You go to the Great Lakes and you can die on that water because it's like an ocean to you and to me, because we're just little human beings.
Yeah.
Well, what happened in the North American continent, one of the reasons why if you travel to California, the plants are totally different than they are on the East Coast. Okay? Totally different. Okay? Is that the whole middle of America was covered with a shallow sea from Canada down to the Gulf of Mexico. You couldn't get there from here.
Huh.
Now, this is something that they really don't tell you about too much. They talk about it. You can look it up and you'll find that it says this. And nobody will explain it because nobody can explain how there can be a half mile of ocean deeper on a planet that stayed the same size. The only way it could possibly be is if all those oceans weren't there, and now the water that was left, or the water that was there then, which isn't as much as there is today, because as I said, everything increases up and down the periodic table. So you get more hydrogen, you get more oxygen, you get more nitrogen, you get more everything. And those gases leach from the core or the outer core through the mantle and out through those cracks that go around the Earth under the oceans. That's what you get out of those cracks. You get gases. You get all the gases of the Earth. There's 60,000 miles of cracks that go around the Earth. If you took all that water away, it would be like one long chain of volcanoes spiraling around the Earth. Unbelievable.
This is just a brain swell day for
I
me.
know. And I'm really sorry to be throwing all of this at you at once. There is a whole lot of it.
The Earth is growing. My brain is growing.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You're getting me, Neil.
Yeah. The thing about this that's important is that we sort of got off on the wrong foot. You had this guy named Sam Carey, okay, who said to everybody, said, look, guys, we have a responsibility. We should be exploring this. Okay, let's say it's wrong. Okay, we should be exploring this. Then what happened is these two guys, one of them named Wadati, one of them named Benioff, were in a geological ship, and they discovered above the island of Samoa what is called a descending plate, a descending oceanic plate, a chunk of the ocean that seemed to be diving back down into the Earth. And they said, what if the Earth's oceans ate its own crust? Okay? So that the fact that we don't have deep ocean crust is due to the fact that the Earth eats its own crust. And maybe that's why the oceans are so young.
So at that point, where would that the stuff it's eating go?
Well, is that like California, how they have all the earthquakes where they're just kind of slowly going back into the ocean?
Not in California. I mean, no. But what they do have is what's called the Ring of Fire. You can look up the Ring of Fire, and that goes around the west side of the Pacific. It starts up around Alaska, and it goes around China and comes down across the top of Australia and into Samoa and that area over there, and it continues down. And what they are saying, and it's a very good theory. God knows it's a good theory. It says it's subducting. The crust is subducting and therefore disappearing, and essentially it's like a rolling floor. It just constantly goes down and under there. And what seems to be the case is that there seems to be a lot of truth to it. I don't know if it's 100% true, but there seems to be a lot of truth to it. That the oceanic plate is in fact subducting under another section of the oceanic plate, which is there's three concepts in geology that cover this kind of thing. It's called a thing called abduction, which is where a crustal plate goes over another piece of plate, which you get on continents sometimes, called abduction. Then there's mountain building, which is from pressure, forcing mountains upward. And then there's subduction, where a plate goes under another plate. The question that has to be answered is there enough subduction going on to eat the whole of all the deep oceans for the last 180 million years? Because there is no deep ocean on Earth older than 180 million years old. Now, this theory says there's not enough of it. Yeah, there may be some, and it may be one of those things that happen on Earth like abduction and mountain building, but there's no way that all the oceans on Earth can be eaten by one ring of fire at the coast of China in 180 million years. Not only that, the area that began to spread in the Pacific Ocean is still sitting there, still available for us to look at and to measure its age, and it has not been subducted. So it's a good piece of a theory, and it's really quite terrific, and I'm sure that some of it is true, but it is not enough to eat the whole of all the oceanic crust of the Earth in 180 million years. Just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. There's a lot of stuff to the theory, and I know very limited time to get into it. Yeah. Of course, we'd have to have you back on and maybe continue from a certain point. It's just a lot of stuff to absorb. And I'll be honest with you, when I first read about it and I was looking at it, I was kind of, saying, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then when I saw the video and how everything fit together, kind of, that's where, I think a lot of people would start at that point. I know on your website, neiladams.com, going the science side, you have a nice, the basics to get everybody kind of up to speed of what you're looking at. And that'd be where I would tell everyone to start.
Right.
Because it makes a lot more sense looking at it. It's a very visual idea.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why we don't really talk about the physics very much, because
Uh-huh.
that's very complicated and you have to get into particle physics and all the rest of it. What happened with me was at the beginning, I realized that this guy, Sam Carey, knew what he was talking about. Everything made sense. But he was attacked and essentially ignored by the geological community and then by the physics community because he did not present the mechanism of how this happened. He could not. Now, logically, if this is a theory that covers everything, or call it a theory of everything, if it covers how stars happen, it covers how galaxies happen and solar systems and moons and meteorites and all the rest of it, if this is a whole theory that covers everything and the tip of the iceberg, the very tip of the iceberg is the Earth growing, then you would have to be a scientist that understood all the sciences. Sam Carey was a geologist. He wasn't a physicist. I realized back then, who's going to help this guy? I mean, he's a great geologist, professor of geology at Sydney University, really up there in the geological community, still was being ignored because everybody else in the other areas of science were saying, well, you haven't proved, that there's a mechanism. How do you do that? Well, what I realized was, being an individual, I thought, who the heck is going to go and support this? What physicist on Earth is going to investigate this theory enough to find the mechanism? Who is going to find the mechanism? He would have to be an idiot. First of all, he'd lose tenure in any school he taught in. He would lose his job. He would lose his friends. He'd have to be an idiot. So I thought,
kind of like if Obama admitted there was aliens.
Yeah, right. So I thought, who's the nearest idiot I know? That's me.
Oh, geez. Self-recognition is always the first step.
So I decided, what I'll do is I'll study this. I'll figure out the mechanism. Take me 2 or 3 years, right? Arrogant. And I'll figure it out, and I'll do a graphic novel on it, and that'll be the end of it.
Okay, so how many years now was this revelation?
30 years.
Okay.
30 years, and I'm still working on it.
Right.
Have you ever finished the graphic novel?
I finished it. Now I have to revise it, and I haven't had it out yet.
Well,
I'm an idiot.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Now, this is extremely basic, just so that
Sure.
I can try and wrap my head around this.
Okay.
All right. The only fossils of sea creatures are found on the continents now. Is that because at one point in time, that is where the seas were, as the Earth expanded?
Grew.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, Jordan. As the Earth grew, the waters
drained off into the new spreading ocean.
All right, and then the way that it fills up in the bottom is kind of like.
It's sort of like if you have a sink over here and you've got it filled with water, and then another sink opens up next to it, and there's a crack, and the water just drains off the upper sink down into the lower sink, and it's no longer in the upper sink. We have no shallow seas on the land anymore. 2/3 of the land was covered with shallow seas. It's all gone, drained off into the new spreading ocean.
Okay, so now the spreading oceans, when a crack a fissure appears, then from the inside of the Earth, the molten inside of the Earth, that's what creeps up to fill the crack, and as it hits the cold water of the oceans, that's what hardens it and gives us the new ocean floor.
That's right.
Oh, geez.
Right.
Okay.
She's grinning
not only that, what happens when something is molten, its clock is not set. Okay? So as soon as it hardens, it goes from a liquid to a solid, its clock begins.
Right.
Okay?
Because when it's molten, it's still continuously in flux.
So not only does its clock begin, but also the direction of the magnetic field is set.
Okay.
So when this stuff comes up now, the North Pole is in the north, and the South Pole is in the south. At some point along the way, that'll reverse. And then the rock that comes up, its magnetic field will go the other way. So they really have these wonderful ways of measuring how old the ocean bottom is. Let me just tell you something. What started this whole thing was is that archaeologists and geologists went down to the bottom of the ocean and they tried to find fish fossils. They tried to find sea cell fossils. Mm-hmm. They couldn't find anything. Wherever they went in the oceans, deep oceans of the world, they couldn't find a fossil older than 70 million years old. Well, the dinosaurs died off 60 million years ago. They couldn't find anything older than 70 million. Not 180. Forget 180. Anything older than 70 million years old.
Yeah.
They couldn't understand. Yet they were digging up fish fossils in Utah, in your backyard, that were, 400 million years old.
Neil, I hate to do this, but our time is up.
Yes, I'm sorry, because I'm finally starting to get it.
That's just fine. You can call anytime.
I want to thank you very much for joining us, for sharing with us.
And I hope you get some really angry letters and faxes.
If we do, I'll forward them on to you.
Well, you just save them on up. Okay. Save them on up till next time.
There we go. I also want to thank you for the work you've done with our comic book history. I mean,
yes,
that's
absolutely
been my life all growing up, and
Jordan was
you were
very
a big part of
excited
it.
when I said you drew a lot of some of the Green Lantern, and he's a huge Green Lantern fan. I'm a huge Superman, Batman, and thank you very much for that.
Just a troublemaker, no matter where I go.
There you go. But very good job. Thank you very much.
It's because of you that we are ruined, and I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that.
Too bad.
Have a good day. We'll be back in touch.
Thanks,
I want to hear
Neil.
more about this.
You take it easy.
Have a good day, Neil.
Bye now.
This has been a brain-swelling day.
I know. I'm exhausted.
Jordan's gonna go home and take a huge nap.
I think this is the least amount that I've talked since we had Stanton Friedman on.
Just throwing that out there, huh?
Well, I couldn't talk at all with Stan.
You can't.
He has way too much brain.
Oh my gosh!
Isotopes.
But I'm just kind of, that once it clicked.
Yeah.
Once I got it in, but when he starts talking about electrons and neutrons and protons and all these tons, I have no idea.
Did you watch the video that I mentioned? It's on our website for people that want to look at it.
Did
I know you haven't had a chance. I know. I'm sorry, but if anyone wants to take a look, whispers081809.mp3, go online. Look at it. I added it underneath Neil's information, and what it shows is pretty much, he's talking about what's happening, but the Earth's collapsing in, and it's all fitting together like a puzzle. I'll show you after the.
No, I know what he's saying.
It was just stunning just to see it though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what kind of I see some kind of like those big huge things. Lisa has one. I don't know what they're called.
Let's skip Nick's brain here for a minute.
It's one of those, and it folds in on itself. And
well, here's the thought. I had a friend that was an artist, and she took a piece of foam rubber and glued a mirror to it, and then took a BB gun and popped the center of the mirror, so that as soon as that tension of a full piece of mirror was gone, it broke apart, but it was still glued to the. So you had like a cracked mirror, but big gaps in it. Really? But if you had compressed it back again, you would have gotten the mirror to fit. And that's kind of the analogy that I was thinking of as he was talking. Was things break apart, but if you put them back to
it all fits.
Yeah.
That's just really
makes
smart.
Sense.
Who we got next week, Nikki?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. And you know what? Now that you ask, it's on the top of my head. I can't. 1 second. I'm sorry.
I do want to thank everybody that we've had today. Anthony Atha, Andy Lloyd, Neil Adams, and for anybody out there who didn't get a chance to listen, power-pirate.com. Get out there, add them. There are a very talented group of young individuals.
I have no idea who we have next week. It's not on my calendar. I don't know why.
That's okay. Just tune in next
They'll
week.
be
I'm
awesome.
sure it'll be
same bat time, same bat channel.
Actually, you know what? The Appalachian ghost people.
Ooh.
So, yeah, we'll be.
Ooh, there
he
should
talks
be some...
about. Actually, it's paranormal. He talks about Bigfoot. Bigfoot. Wait a second. Give me your number. You didn't do it last week.
47%.
Did you see what he never did? Jordan.
He wrote 47% on something.
He did write 47% on something.
45%.
45%. You gave him 2 extra. Well, he went from 0. If last week Jordan skipped out.
I was a non-believer last week. I'm a little bit more. That's all the time we got for this
Yeah,
week.
Wait, let's go
Okay.
back to the boobs on that. I looked at the video.
Lola's like, I want to be there so I can talk about the boobs.
There is no gorilla that has... Female gorillas do not have boobs like that. I'm sorry. These were just hairy boobs.
No,
Saggy, hairy boobs.
You last time when we talked about with Don Keating, you were pretty skeptical, and we all were because of the stupid gorilla suit in the frozen.
Oh,
thing.
yeah, that guy.
But now, after you listened to Gentleman last week, have you moved closer to...
I agree that there's something. Is it the missing link? No, I don't think so.
Bigfoot, whatever you would think of the concept of Bigfoot.
I don't. I honestly,
there
I
could have
don't
been
know.
a large monkey species out there. It's going to take a lot. And I told Nick, he's like, why 45%? Because I'm not going to throw up a toss-up and say, well, I'm 50-50. I'm not 50-50. I'm very much...
Oh, I'm even less than you're 45. Because now, do you honestly think that there's some type of ape-like animal wandering the woods of Ohio? I'm sorry, but I'm just not.
Whenever Nick they're in the mall.
Well, I know.
I run into people all the time. They look just like an ape. What are you talking about?
I know people with manners like apes. I guess it all kind of counts.
Yeah, you take them in the woods. Don't let them shave for about a couple years.
Not even, boy. Didn't you watch Rachel Ray one day last week? Ooh.
What, she grow a beard?
No. She had hairy men on there, like, doing wax jobs on their... and these guys were... Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Yeah,
I wish I owned the wax stock.
I always thought I had, kind of a hairy guy. And then one of my friends one day... they were doing all the guys always. Oh, I've got the hairier chest. Jordan's not got much. This guy, I mean, he had he had a cardigan sweater going on.
I know. Yeah, that's how some of these guys. You could not see skin. You could not see skin. They were so hairy. And I was like, oh.
She should have had him do the classic walk and look back a little bit for some,
It's just those boobs didn't look real. I mean, female apes don't have boobs like that.
Yeah. But would a female Sasquatch? That's the question, I guess. Not really,
well, I'm trying to think. Women, Homo sapien women do not have hair on their chest, regardless of the fact that we need to protect, our mammary glands. I'm trying to put this as nicely. We don't have hairy chests. So why would something that close to human...
Well, that's if you put it as the missing link. And that's if you go that far with it.
I'd rather talk about the Sumatrans and stuff. Now I believe all that.
I think if we get rid of the missing link part and put them as just another species of ape, maybe out in the woods, I think I could get there. But the missing link part, it doesn't make sense to me. Why are they still being?
Now, see, I wonder, have there ever been any sightings of any of these creatures in somewhere South America where there are still tons of species of things that we have never encountered yet because it's so dense and forested.
We should ask about that is we had him on last December, Martin Walk.
Yeah.
He spent some time in the Amazon talking to a bunch of the different tribes. Bet you he might have an answer to that.
Yeah. But I'm sure there's...
Because they used to tell him stories all the time. In fact, I know I might call up and find out.
Good, because
I'd be interested. Let us know what he says.
Yeah.
Because I would buy that. Mm-hmm. More than I would the woods of Ohio.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, the grass man thing, which is very interesting. Why are these grass mounds out there? But I don't know. It's hard to swallow. It's a hard one to swallow. So.
Well, why are they mounds down in Moundsville?
Well, these are just built though. They were
like little grass huts.
Like grass huts.
That's what the grass man was.
Have you looked at the economy lately?
Yeah, I know, right?
All right, guys.
Man, we got to get out of here.
We need to.
Boss is going to kill us. Next week, Appalachian Ghost Stories. Thanks to everybody on the show today.
Good.
Until then, don't be afraid. Only believe.